Cool. Hey, hi Darryl, hi James. Hello everyone, welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops, live on Sundays with Bill. I almost forgot today, but I made it. You know, less than an hour ago I was a few miles away from here and it hit me, oh, it's Sunday, I gotta get back. So anyway, good thing there's not a lot involved in setting this up, so I'm here. Good to see you, thanks for being here, you guys. I have to say, I really don't have anything planned at all this week, other than the fact I'm going to talk about Photostock has got its, the registrations are open there now. And, but man, what a crazy week this has been. I don't know if any of you have ever been involved with your own server, but, you know, pretty much since the beginning of the internet, I got really involved with, what's going on, you know, with online, you know, and, you know, I quickly kind of found out that by leasing my own server and leasing out space to other people, it was a good way to run things. And, you know, I learned enough to be dangerous about it like I do with a lot of things. And, but I've been running my own server now since, man, I don't know. The end of the 90s is probably when I started leasing space. The first was on a rack thing down in Florida, and then I shifted over to Rack Shack, which was out of Texas. And then about a little less than 20 years ago, I hooked up with this company called Wired Tree out of Chicago, which was essentially bought up by Liquid Web, who is now who I host with. And they're right here in Michigan, in Lansing. But I realized the other day that I'd had this server for nearly 20 years, and I'd been running out of you know, options of things that I could run on the server just because it was an outdated operating system. And anyway, to make a long story short, I finally decided to shift over the server this year, not long before I was going to start open registrations for Photostock, which I began on the 1st, late on the 1st. But so that meant migrating the server to a new server and changing all of the DNS and changing all of the IPs and everything over, which I had assistance with, of course, but it was still a bit of a nightmare being online all week with tech support and wondering whether it was going to be in time. And finally made it in time, only to find out that once I thought everything was working fine once the migration was finished, and I kind of signed off on it all. And then we find out that one of the websites was infected with a malware. And lo and behold, the website that's infected with malware is photostockfest.com, which I find out the day that it goes into effect. Basically, it took a few registrations, and then people started writing to me saying, you know, it's just basically started to blow up, saying things aren't working correctly, what's going on here? I figured it out, had to shut down the server, we had to scan it for malware, found it, had to delete the files that needed to be deleted. And mind you, all this is done remotely on my computer, from their computer, wherever it is. I think it's supposed to be in Lansing, Michigan, but it's probably, who knows where it is. But anyway, and then I found out it had several attacks that day from an IP address in China. So, you know, I mean, that's not, they didn't get in, but that's not, you know, that's not abnormal. But the very fact that this malware got in, it either got in through me updating some plugins and things through the websites as I was doing so, but that doesn't usually happen that way. And my thinking is it was on the server to begin with. But anyway, everything's removed now. I had to shut down registrations in the midst of it after I'd sent out the newsletter that this was happening, and I had to shut it down for about 6 to 8 hours. So that was a bit of a nightmare. And not without its stresses. And so I got it back up and running again, and it's available now, photostockfest.com, and I've been checking it all day. I've scanned it. I've got my own malware scanner on there right now, and it's not finding anything new, so we're good to go. So anyway, that aside, that's the kind of week it's been. I don't host as many websites on my server anymore, and I'm not looking for any new ones, so I don't advertise it. But I've got several photographers on there and a couple of businesses, and so, you know, I'm just happy that it happened to one of my businesses and not one of the other ones. But you know, now everything's been scanned, everybody's checking everything. It's being well controlled. But anyway. Yeah, so now you can register if you're willing to come or if you want to come. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going to be going on there. Let me see who else is here first. Digital files, Bill says, firm storage is a big topic, so many different solutions for digital, but can be complex for many users. Yes, Daryl, tell me about it. Like I say, if you're going to run your own server anywhere, it's pretty complex. And you know, you have to know enough about Unix and those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, I agree that the camera right now is sitting on top of a Drobo system that I use for storing all of my digital files, and I'm looking at how full it is right now. It's about half full, but it basically contains my life in digital photography, and a lot of my film photography career now too has been scanned and put in there. And although I do have backups, it's just kind of scary to think everything's in that one little box. And the fact of the matter is if I didn't know what I knew now, I don't know whether I'd be able to do this. So it's one of those things for photographers that is pretty difficult, and maybe I should talk about that. You know, I mean, my storage program, like what I use is I don't use an NAS system. I don't have a network system. Basically, I have a system of 5 hard drives that run on a RAID system. I can lose one of those hard drives at any time, and all of the rest will take up for that. It has a lot of you know, diagnostics that it does to itself constantly. So I'm looking at it and I can see all the lights are green right now. So, you know, if something starts to go yellow or whatever, you better replace that drive. And fortunately, I've set up the RAID so I can lose one of those drives. But if I lost this whole system, I'm done. So, but really, and I would love to back this system up. And I do have most of it backed up other places, but not in another system like this, which I do want to replace. But it's an expensive system. I mean, to set this thing up with the box and the 5 hard drives, you know, really high quality, fast, high capacity drive. Now they're mechanical drives, they're not SSD drives, which I would like to shift over to, but this thing would cost me a lot of money. Even so, this thing cost me $3,000, and that's a lot of money for somebody into photography. I mean, you've got a camera now that costs you $4,000, and you've got a storage system that costs you $3,000 to $4,000, and I don't know, you know. But it is confusing. So, you know, this is the way that I do it, and this is the way that I catalog all my system, and my system is cataloged on the Drobo through Lightroom, and I use Lightroom. I don't use Photoshop's browse capability. I use Lightroom because Lightroom works as a great, very robust imaging program that some of you might use. And Lightroom helps me catalog everything as well as work on the images itself and keep the original files safe. So anyway, let me see what people are saying here. Yeah, thanks, Barry. That is a good topic. I should think about these things, you know. And this is what. Let me write this down because I don't want to get into it too much today, because I'd like to get into that solutions. Because I'd like to get into that, you know. I mean, for so many years I was, for so many years I was bad, you know. I mean, let's see, somewhere around here I actually still have these are all gold DVDs. Remember these things? I don't even have anything I can read them on anymore. But at one time I had several years on here. Here I've got it set up. This is when I first started shooting digitally. So this is like, this one here I have 6/2/2007 to 7/1/2007. And that's basically all I could fit in there, you know. And so, you know, now everything's on the Drobo, of course. I don't know how far back these go, but like I say, they didn't cover that much. And I got the gold disc because everybody said those were the ones that wouldn't oxidize and go bad. And I'm looking at them now and they're still okay. So I've had these things for a while. But anyway, this is to show you how bad I've been. And this is how I used to store things. And now I'm doing it the way that I do. And I think what happened was Lightroom, and I don't remember what year, probably right around here, because if that's 2007, that's about the time when I figured out I better shift over. And so Lightroom, I started to finally get the idea of that. So I took all the things off these CDs or off these DVDs, and everything off of my cameras and every little drive I had anywhere that I'd been storing things on, because that's what a lot of people do. And I got everything back together with Lightroom. It was really good because it read the metadata of all those files. Unfortunately, there was metadata in all those files, so it knew the dates it was made and those kind of things. So Lightroom I was able to basically upload everything into a Lightroom catalog file, and so everything's there now. I can go to Lightroom and I can go to my Drobo drive and where I have everything archived, and I can basically find every digital file that I've ever done, and then every other film analog image that I've scanned and done as well. So I finally got good at being organized about this. So yeah, that's a good thing. I'll talk about that one of these ones. I'll set up a whole thing for that, right? Yeah. Barry says, same with me, Bill. Then I found out that some of them couldn't be read, and I did that too. And that's when I really started going in earnest to find another way to do this, because that was terrifying. Another thing along those lines is I had one of the early digital cameras was a Kodak D40, I believe it was. I wish I still had that thing because it's probably a museum piece, but anyway, I can't even remember, 640 by 480. It wasn't that great. But I remember when I got that thing, it was in the middle 90s, and I had started doing the website thing, and I had already been doing this virtual road trip thing that I've told you about before, where I was traveling around the country and using a Nikon Cool Scan to scan black and white film that I would develop in the dark rooms of hotel rooms to do my daily blog as I went around. And this was like in the 90s. Like I said, I was one of the first ones to do those things, I think. But to have this D40 digital camera that I could plug in and just have my images that way without hours of darkroom work and then scanning and putting things up, it was really cool. And I thought, this is it, we'd made it. I looked at these files and thought, yeah, they're good enough. Anyway, they're not, and over the course of this whole digital period, I've gone back and looked at some of those files, and I can't believe I ever thought they were anywhere close. They look worse than video files did from 1958, But anyway, it was interesting to find them, but now what I was saying is I get back to those now. I was looking at them a few months ago, and crazily enough, those files have started to deteriorate. So it's another thing to be paranoid, all these digital people. I'm sure that the file structures and things have gotten a lot better, but these had started to deteriorate, and I could still look at them. I've got some of them. Hopefully I'll dig them out and I'll show them to you at some point, because I saved them as TIFF files afterward because they were kind of like cool works of art, because you could sort of see the original image in there, and unlike old photographs that would just fade away, these started to run. They looked like, if any of you are familiar with Larry Poons or a Jackson Pollock painting, they looked like they were running like the digital. Anyway, it's really crazy how a lot of those had deteriorated. And these are digital files that were just held on drives places. So I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, yeah, consider that, that everything inside of this Drobo might be toast at some point just because of age. Let's see here. Hi, David. Yeah. It is cool. Yeah, that whole thing about slides, man. David says that Lightroom's great. I have loads of slides I keep thinking I need to scan. Yeah, I've got tons of old slides. God, back in the days when I used to shoot Retina and used to shoot music, I've got so many slides from that. I mean, fortunately, a lot of the best ones went off to Retina, and I'm sure that they've been scanned at some point now. But all of my stock that I have is, which are thousands and thousands of transparencies. I'd love to scan them at some point, but there's not enough time in life for that. I just don't know how to do it. I wish there was some machine that I could get where I could just put a stack of them in there and they would just go zoop, zoop, zoop and make my scans and make them, good. make them, worthy. But the thing is, a lot of those images, I shot a concert. I'd shoot 200 images at a concert, and or at a photo shoot or whatever, and one or two of those images would be used, and not all of them are great, so I don't necessarily want to scan all of those, you know what I mean? So at some point, I'm going to have to sit down with an assistant or somebody at a light table and just go through them and toss them. I wish I would have done that at the time. My old mentor, Alan McQueenie, I remember when I used to work with him and we would shoot jobs, and back then you'd have to shoot things all in transparency, and they'd come back. Stacks, he shot Kodachrome too, so stacks and stacks of Kodachrome would come back, and you'd run them through the projector and just pull them out. He would like, nope. These are ones that he would not let go to the art director to be considered. And those used to just go right in the garbage, and boom, boom, boom. There'd be a whole garbage can full of them. I think about those sometimes. It'd be just nice to have one of those, because I don't really even know what he saw that was so different than the other ones. But anyway, that aside, yeah, it's good to digitize all of your old work, because this is obviously the way the new world is going. And for anybody that's going to be interested, I really hope that people will be interested in this down the line. I fear for us in having a whole generation with no actual printed pictures. But, if the stewards of their digital files work out well, we'll have some of this recorded. But yeah, it's a scary thing to know that everything is kind of this intangible ether. But hey, it's still fun to make them, right? It's still fun to make the pictures. Yeah, let's see. Maybe explain the subject so that some of the simpletons can understand it. Backup seems very complex and expensive. Well, Barry, yes, it is. And this is a good topic. I'll definitely get into this. That's the problem with this all, though, is that we have this cross part of generations where we have, we have people like my son that are digital natives. They don't know anything but that. And then there's us who are caught in between, But, even my poor mother, rest her soul, she was in her 90s, and I was able to teach her to use an iPad and keep in contact, and she was surfing the web and doing the whole thing. So we can all do it, but yeah, it's hard to teach certain things, if you have a good handle on your computer and you have a good handle on your files already and where you're storing them and how they are, it's fairly easy to get people into it. But as far as like getting a beginner into it, that's an interesting challenge. That's a good idea, not necessarily for a live discussion, but maybe I should work on that for a video, something that I can think about a little bit more and not put anybody down a bad rabbit hole. I always advocate for the Lightroom because I like it a lot. I've tried a couple of other programs, but I'm not that kind of person that goes for the alternative so much anymore as far as those things go. I just stick with what's tried and true. And since I began this whole thing, Adobe has been my go-to. Other than the very first imaging program that I had was called Picture Publisher. Some of you may remember that. Picture Publisher was like a poor, stepchild of Adobe. It was similar tools, similar and things, but just wasn't quite as good. But it was cheaper, a lot cheaper. So for me, early getting on and learning this whole process digitally, it was a really good program. I wonder what happened to them. But anyway, I ended up going over with Adobe, of course, like everybody else. And I'm kind of cool with that Adobe DNA. I've used a lot of their programs and things for different book publishing with InDesign and Photoshop. So Lightroom was kind of an easy way to go, because it's the similar DNA. So I will suggest that to Barry or anybody else that's there that's not using it right now and is looking for some sort of a solution to catalog their work. Lightroom's a really good way to go. Because what Lightroom does is it basically takes all of your imagery, you download it, you can move it to where you want it to, or it can just catalog it in place wherever it is. So if you have a million little drives someplace, you can have those all plugged in and catalog them. But I highly advise getting them all into one area. But you can, then it catalogs all those images and it keeps little thumbnails of them, and those thumbnails will open up into bigger images, but they're not the original file. You can actually work on those images and do a lot of, it's very robust now, you can do a lot of what you can do with Photoshop in there. And then you can export that file to Photoshop. But the beauty of it is you're exporting a file that you've been working on. You haven't been exporting the original file. So you're not damaging your original files at all. It's like having your negatives all in a box and not being able to damage them at all. But you can work on them and change them all you want. But as long as you don't save them back in that original folder as that original file name, they're always there. So it's like having your raw negative all the time. And so now I shoot everything in RAW format as well. So basically, everything is in that box that this camera is sitting on right now in a raw state that I can take and then manipulate and change and do what I really need to do. Like I said, I think I said last week, or if I said it perhaps in one of the videos, is like, you know, Adam's quote where, you know, the negative is just the score and the final print is your performance of it, you know. It's the same goes with a digital file, you know. Your digital file comes out of your camera and it's pretty blasé and it's kind of got a blue cast, and, you know, depending on the camera you're working with, you know, it doesn't look so great, especially if you're shooting in RAW. I mean, RAW, it's just kind of giving you the median of everything. And so, anyway, that's another story, but Lightroom's great for that. So any of you that haven't done it yet and you're looking for something to catalog your work, I highly advise Lightroom as being that go-to program. They've been upgrading it since they started it. I think it was maybe 2005, 2006. It's continually getting better, and it's pretty awesome. So check it out. I have no affiliation with them at all, so wouldn't that be nice? Let's see here. Yeah, you have Barry says, I have approximately 150,000 Kodachromes in their little yellow boxes waiting to be scanned. It takes about 1 hour to scan just one and be spotted and cleaned. I don't have enough years in my life yet. Excuse me. Yeah, Barry, I'm with you on that, you know. I mean, it's weird to be at this point of life where you're always putting things off, thinking, yeah, I'm going to get to that someday. I'm going to get to that someday. And I think it was a big, cool, actually, part of my life where I realized, you know, I'm not going to get to all this stuff, so let's just start disposing of some of it. Now, I don't want to be disposing of my Kodachromes, but, you know, yeah, it's a dilemma. I don't know what to do. I got family slides going way back, you know, and I'm the last one left in my family pretty much, so I don't know what I want to do. You know, my son isn't that interested in it right now, but I still think that maybe someday he will be, so right now I'm just keeping several big boxes of these slides. But I would really like to have them scanned. And the thing is that these have got mold on them. They got all kinds of stuff. So cleaning them up would be a nightmare. That's why I say you got to be choosy. Just pick the specific ones you really need. So becoming a good curator and a good editor of your own work is really good when it comes down to that. And the bad part of it is, I'll tell you, is that not only that, I've got negatives from other people. And this morning I had breakfast with my good friend Steve down the hill who builds the print frames and things. Steve was telling me he found some old negatives. Somebody from the area gave him some old negatives that, hey Curtis, somebody gave him some old negatives that were perhaps 620. I'm not really sure, I haven't seen them yet. But he said a lot of them seem to be historic places of the area that we're going to go through and look at. You know, and I told him I would I would photograph some of them. But, you know, even those, can't really go through all of them, you know, I just don't have enough time unless I could teach somebody else. But yeah, so my point is I can't even get to my own work, let alone I'm kind of like starting to do some other stuff. Plus, I found this thing. Let me go back and get these for you because I'd like to show these off. I don't know who the photographer is, and man, they're all dusty now. But I don't know if any of you remember these things, these Kodak negative files. And whoever it was, my mother years ago, you know, she's now gone, and I don't know how many years ago it was that we got these, but she found these in a rummage sale. And I took them thinking, yeah, I'll go through there and figure out some ones to print at some point. But, you know, they're all beautifully categorized, 120 negatives, no idea the camera or anything like that. But each one of these sleeves has a negative in there, and from what I've gone through, it's somebody's whole journey west, probably in the 30s or 40s, judging by the cars that are in it. And they're beautiful photographs. They're really nicely composed. Obviously, the person who made these negatives knew what they were doing. You know, I mean, they took the time to do this, right? So anyway, I really don't know how to track this person down. It has written on here where they are and what it is, no name, no anything like that. But so point is that not only do I have my own negatives, I got all these other ones, but you know, I can't get rid of these. So yeah, I've been through, I haven't been through every one because I have probably 10 of these little packs that came from the same thing. Just going through and selectively pulling some out, they're all from a different part along. Anybody that would have taken a trip west on Highway 66 or, you know, because there's, you know, Mitten Buttes, all the places you like to go to when you take a drive out west are all in here. But yeah, there's nothing that gives me, and nothing that I found so far that gives me any clue as to who the photographer might be. But, you know, I always think of, you know, I can't think of her name right now, whose photographs were found in a, you know, I can't even think of his name right now. But you know, who found all the negatives in the film from her and found out these are just amazing images, and they found out who she was. You know, these aren't that good, but they're pretty good. It'd be nice to find out. Let's see here. Yeah, can't bear to part with them. I know. You know, and hopefully you've got somebody in your life that you can pass them on to, and will find some interest in them as well. You know, I've got a lot of my old Kodachrome stuff. I'll confess that back in the day, you know, early on is when I shot most of my Kodachrome. Later, as I became more of a commercial photographer, simply because I had to have everything processed locally, and we didn't have a local, you know, a local Kodachrome processor, even though there were more of them back in those days other than just Dwayne's. But we shot mostly in Ektachromes, and you know, Ektachrome was kind of striving to become Kodachrome. It was going for warmer things, you know, Ektachrome R's, and so I used a lot of those films. And unfortunately, once I got into my commercial career and beyond, I really didn't shoot much Kodachrome. I'll confess that I've still got about 5 or 6 rolls just in their packages in the refrigerator back there, you know, just as museum pieces now. But I know a lot of people did, and it's unbelievably beautiful film. So anyway, Barry, I'm sure you've seen that movie, Kodachrome. You know, it's a really nice movie. I kind of liked it. It was pretty interesting how they rolled up, you know, 100 different photographers' careers into the one guy, Ed Harris. Let me read here and see what we got. Vivian Meyer, thank you, David. Geez, you know, I should know this stuff because, you know, I know stuff. And, you know, Falou, I've met the guy, you know, and actually, you know, my friend Bob Carney has gotten some of the negatives that he's printed, and, you know, I just could not think of her name. It might be a Freudian thing, and, you know, you know, it's hard not to look at her work and be jealous and think, oh, man, I should have had my camera with me constantly. Even though I've had my camera with me constantly, it's amazing to see some of that stuff. Like, if you've ever gone through and seen, like, a large body of that work, even though I contend that she was aware of what she was doing, and she knew a lot of different photographers working at that time, because she definitely, you can see where she emulates certain people along the way. And I just can't imagine that she would be, you know, that innocent that she would be able to pull all those things off. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm wrong, you know, but man, just to have it with her and to work with it like that often, and to have like all those undeveloped rolls of film, you know, I mean, there's something else going on other than just liking to make pictures, right? You know, but yeah, good thing she did it. Yeah. Well, anyway, so aside from all this stuff, I kind of wanted to talk about what's going on with Photostock, and you know, I don't even know if people are watching that are going to be part of that, but I'm going to link this into my Photostock group because I wanted people to know some of the stuff that's happening for this year. And I'll check in here again in a minute to see what everybody's saying. And let me try to have my non-branded drink here. I'm drinking with 2 hands. What does that mean? Anyway, so Photostock, you know, I mean, it's a big part of my year, and it's pretty stressful, and I'm trying to make it less stressful all the time. Anybody that's been to it knows, you know, I have a great time, but I can run, you know, I run pretty hot at Photostock because there's just so many people and so many people coming at you and so many things going on. And I tend to be kind of a control freak. So although I do delegate some things, I'm not really great at delegating, and I'm trying to get better at that. I'd be a lot better at that if I did this every month rather than every year. So, it takes me, I'm still learning. After 2006 was when the first one was. But anyway, bringing it all home this year and close into Cross Village has been a lot of fun and planning, and I think it's going to be good. And that was part of my breakfast this morning, was talking to some people about it. And, people are pretty excited about it. I mean, we have a pretty small, sleepy little town. And I've actually done a video that I'm going to be putting together later about announcing the photo stock and showing some things around town and things. I did it yesterday while it was snowing, which is pretty funny. April 2nd, it's still snowing here. But yeah, so anyway, I've got the old town hall. Now, all these buildings, I've been digging into it. All these buildings were built in 1870s. So one of them goes back to 1850s. We're going to be using the old town hall. And all of these have kind of old floors, crickety floors and things, but they're really nice. The township's kept them in really good shape. And so there's the town hall where we can fit maybe 40, 50 people. Probably just going to use that for tables, where we're going to set up prints for the print walk on Saturday. And then there's a small park in between them. And then there's the old schoolhouse, which I found out today was probably it's one of the earlier buildings. And you go inside and you really realize it's cool floor and stuff. But there's a fairly big meeting room in there that we'll be using for the presentations. And it should house as many people as the old basement at the Crooked Tree used to hold, where we used to have this event. And it would hold about 70 people down in there. It's kind of what we go for. It's kind of like the size of this event. But I don't have any, real big presenters yet. I'm working on some people. So that will be happening. So we have that building, and that room on Saturday will also be turned into an area with tables where people will be showing their prints. And in the little park in between, we'll have some tents set up there, and some of the local people, my friend Steve will be there with some of the bakery goods that he makes, and I'm going to have the store is going to know about us, the town store, which is opening up again finally. They're going to know about us, so they'll be providing some things for us. Little Peninsula's souvenir shop, I'm going to talk to them about perhaps making some little sticker, something that has something to do with it, that would be something that would be in their store for time, just that recognizes photo stock. We have the Legs Inn, which any of you that have been up here know the Legs Inn. It's one of the famous restaurants in northern Michigan. There's a little old stone church, and there's the facilities where we're going to be, but there's not a whole lot. And then you go down the hill, down the bluff, and you're at the lake. Big Lake Michigan is all right out here, and you're right down on the lake. And down there is the Port of Cross Village, where a lot of my photos and videos come from. And there is a picnic pavilion down there named after my old friend Gene Reck, who has since Pat left us, but he leaves a big mark around here. It's a really nice pavilion, and we'll have a cookout down there, maybe 2 cookouts, and that will be included in your registration fee. And basically, it's just going to be, we're going to get a bunch of potato salad, we're going to get a bunch of potato chips, we're going to get a bunch of hamburgers and hot dogs and that kind of thing, and make a big social event of it. So anyway, there's that. And now this year, I've also just recently found out from our local Odawa tribe has property there on the lake, and they have started kind of an on the down low campsite in there where they rent out these 2 campsites. And I know the spot really well. I've seen people camping in there and didn't really know what it was about. But anyway, I've taken that on for the 2 nights that we're there. And so that's really cool. It's actually bigger than 2 campsites. Unfortunately, only tents can go in there. So anybody that wants to stay in a tent can stay down there. There's a porta potty, and you're right there down at the Port of Cross Village. You're within walking distance of the little town up the hill. And there's a fire circle there and picnic tables. So I'm kind of thinking that that's why I'm renting that area. So that will be our fire pit. We used to do that kind of back at the Birchwood in the court there, but we weren't right on the lake. I mean, we are literally right on the beach at this point. So we got this fire, and you step 100 yards away from the fire, and there's the northern sky at night. So what's better, hanging around the hotel for a fire pit or being up there? I think up there. So anyway, we have that too. So basically, we're kind of taking over the little town, and I think it's going to be a really good time. I'm going to get with some people if some of you are interested in helping out at some point with it. I'm going to try to get some people. I have some locals that I'm going to be working with here that are helping me out this year, so we're going to try to delegate a little bit of this stuff. But it's going to be I think, a really good time. And I think it might be one of the best times ever, just based upon the community spirit of it. And crossing my fingers for good weather, and hopefully everybody else will think for that too, or hope for that too. But anyway, so think June 24th to 26th, Cross Village, Michigan. Look it up on your maps. If you know the state of Michigan, we are here. This is Michigan, Detroit down here. I live way up here, and this is where we're going to be, right here on the shore of Big Lake, Michigan. Sunsets, it's unbelievable, and in the summertime, it's one of the reasons we hold this around solstice is we don't get sunset till nearly 10 o'clock at night, and then there's a golden hour that goes on for quite a while. So for photography in the summertime, it can't be beat. And so rather than keeping everybody at the hotel away from all of that stuff, I thought, why not just place us right in the midst of all that? And the really hardy people that want a rustic campsite are able to pitch a tent down there and spend the nights. So think about it. And if you want to join us, this year I've set the price at $125 for people. Your price includes these cookouts, it includes all presentations and demonstrations, and it includes space at the tables and things to show your prints. So anybody that comes, I highly recommend that they bring a portfolio, and you can just have loose prints, but the game's really been upped over the years. I mean, the first year when we sat around the fire over there, we all had loose prints and we showed some prints and that was it. Well, the next year there's portfolio boxes, and now people are coming with beautifully produced work, which is why I thought, let's involve more people in this. I mean, rather than just show them amongst ourselves, let's bring in locals. And it's a perfect area because where I live up here, as I'm telling you, is a resort area in the summertime especially. In June, when we have this, is usually when things are just starting to roll. So there's a lot of seasonal people that come up here and spend time, and it's a very well-heeled area, and people do spend money on art. So I thought, why not give people a chance to sell a few of their prints, or even at least get the chance to try to do it. Not many of us even get that chance. So I'm not talking break the bank to make yourself a nice portfolio, but this is something where people really started to present their best, and it's really high quality stuff. I mean, it's amazing how good work comes through Photostock. I can't emphasize that enough. People are really good, and it doesn't matter whether you're shooting wet plate or whether you're shooting with the iPhone. I mean, there's some really incredible stuff that happens here. So I highly advise it. Yeah. So anyway, think about that. Photostockfest.com. That's about all I can think about right now. You can, the website is still pretty rudimentary. I would have had that in a much better shape if I hadn't had the problems with transferring the server that I told you about. But I'll get to that even more, and I'll start talking about what's happening. And even the website used to be really great before I switched it over because it had all of our history and it had all the people that have been here. I still have all that in the database, but I have to add that to the website. So it'll go back. I mean, Photostock's been really cool. We've had, Shelby Lee Adams, and we've had Andrew Moore, and we've had, A.D. Coleman and Tom Halstead, and wow, it's been kind of, pinch me. I've had a lot of really cool people have come up here, and what's cool about it too is we get a lot of people that are fairly well known in their own right that just come. They just like to come, because it's a good place to come. You check your ego. Everybody's just all on an equal level. Nobody stress their stuff. There's really no reason to, and it's just a way for all of us to get together and hang out with people who do what we do. So yeah. The best place to fly into is Pellston, Michigan, PLN. Now, unfortunately, that'll probably be a little bit more expensive. It'll add a couple $100 to your ticket because what it does is it connects to Detroit. But Pellston is only not even 11 miles away from my house right now. I mean, actually, when you're circling to land on a certain wind day, you actually come over my property here. And that's the closest place. That's usually where I fly people into that are coming, that I'm bringing here, because that way I don't have to drive to Traverse City. Now, I have brought people. Dan Burkholder came into Traverse, and some others, just because some people, it's more beneficial for me to bring them into Traverse. Now, Traverse City is TVC. That's about 80 miles south of me. It's a beautiful city, beautiful little city. It's right on the lake as well. It's, if you look here, it's right over here. But Traverse is a good place, big airport. Very often it's a lot cheaper to fly into Traverse. People come into Traverse, they rent a car. I'm thinking this year that if I get enough people from Travers, that this year part of my event is I'm going to rent a couple of vans from the local rental so that I can shuttle people around some, or hire a driver to maybe shuttle us around. So that's a possibility too. People that are coming, if you are going to come and you are going to fly into Traverse City, keep in contact with me through my website, billschwab.com, contact form, because I might be able to work out some kind of a group deal where I'm picking people up and bringing them back. Or at the very least, other people are coming and I can maybe get people to share a rental car or something like that. So, Traverse City. Detroit is 300 miles away, but Detroit would probably be the cheapest option. I have had people, Ted Orland, as a matter of fact, Ted and Frances, his wife, wanted to come and see Michigan. So they flew into Detroit and they rented a car and they did a trip on up here, and Photostock was kind of the pinnacle of their thing. And they had a really good time doing that. And I think a few other people have flown into Detroit as well. So anyway, Detroit, which is DTW, Traverse City, which is TVC, that's the next closest. And then there's Pellston, which is really close, which is PLN. And I have now started to add that $200 every time I fly on a flight, because it's so much easier for me to just go there, even to drive to Traverse City. I could basically roll out of bed, get on a plane within 45 minutes, which is crazy. It's a little tiny airport, so there's, hardly any security or anything, you know what I mean? It's pretty much, it's a good place to come if you're coming. Let's see here. Good question though. Yeah, that's the best place to fly into, Pellston, I think, and they rent cars there too. I know a lot of people that come here rent them. Be sure to pay for your insurance on those cars. One year, one friend of mine came here and he cut a little too close to a stump and put a dent in the car. And fortunately, he had paid his full coverage and they just said, oh, fine, take off. Anyway, things happen at Photostock. What happens at Photostock doesn't necessarily stay here, but it's a good time. Anyway, I really, I love to see people and I love to be social, and I know it's a long way for people, but it's been a good time and people love it. And I've got so many people that come year after year, which is really heartening. And that's another thing that kind of puts a little bit more weight on it for me, is I like to really make it happen good. And every year I try to make something new happen. I try to shake people up a little bit, that's why I bring in people like Holly Roberts or Andrew Moore, who, Andrew Moore, at the time he came, God, let me tell you a story about that. If any of you know Andrew Moore, he did this book called Detroit Dismantled. And that book became very famous, along with this pair of French photographers that came along, became very famous in the world as like Detroit is like the pits and falling apart and whatever. And, agreed. I started to open up my eyes and that was happening, but they all took him out of context. But, the thing about Andrew Moore is that he got quite well known with that. And I was on this trip in Iceland and there was a guy who will remain nameless because we're still good friends and I don't want to pick on him, but the whole time he could just talk about, he'd never been to Detroit, but all he could talk about was Andrew Moore and what Detroit was like. And I lived in Detroit and he was talking to me about, oh yeah, that's the place where trees grow out of buildings. I said, yeah, well, there's a couple of them. But anyway, it was my idea that a book, if that's the narrative that you create of someplace, if the narrative that you create of someplace is all just dismantled and just decay, that's what people are going to think of that place. And Detroit was far much more than that. So I had a real problem with it. And we had our little tiffs and our little arguments and stuff. And, I was telling him, you don't know Detroit. Come and see Detroit. You're basing it upon a guy's photography. So anyway, done with this trip. Last thing I want to hear about is anything about Andrew Moore, right? I get back to Michigan and I start looking on APUG and somebody's commenting saying, hey, I hear that Andrew Moore is coming to Photostock. He's going to be presenting at a museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and he's heard about Photostock and he wants to come. And I just thought, oh great, what am I going to do? So immediately I wrote to Andrew and I just said, hey, I'm this guy that does this. And first off is like, why are you coming? And second off is like, even though I have like this love-hate relationship with your work, if you're coming, would you be a presenter there? And he was really nice. He agreed. And by the time he got here and we hung out for the weekend, we were great friends. He's really nice. He's that kind of guy. I can go to one of his shows and he sees you and he immediately will take off into a corner and hang out with you. Or, if I contact him online, I really haven't hung out with him, but he's that kind of guy, and that's what Photostock's about. You meet kindred spirits and you become friends. Well, anyway, that was my story with Andrew, is that I come back and last person in the world I want to hear about is Andrew Moore. And then I find he's coming to my event. And anyway, it was cool. And it was a good year. And he was really good to have. And I love his work, and check out his work, by the way, Andrew Moore. If you look him up online, he's done his work in Cuba, and his work is more about nature taking back things, and that's kind of what his work in Detroit was. And you know, what happened was that book they made in conjunction with a museum in Ohio, forgive me, for Athens, I believe, and they were the ones that kind of took the book and ran with it with the Detroit Dismantled, and it was kind of taking even Andrew's work out of context in a way, but great book too. Check out the book. So yeah, let's see. Terry, hey Terry, good to see you. Keith, nice to see you. Matt Maresh plugged Photostock on his live stream Friday, just an FYI. Oh, I got to thank Matt, and I'll give Matt a return plug. If any of you don't know Matt Maresh, check him out. Film Photography Podcast is how I first met Matt, long time ago. I'll tell you a story. This kid, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but this kid contacts me, and you know, I do what I do and I keep track of what other people are doing, but a lot of times it's hard enough to keep track of what I do myself. So I wasn't really familiar with what he did, and he got a hold of me and he said that he was coming to Photostock. That was great. And did I want to interview with him before this film photography podcast? And could he interview other people at the podcast, at the event? And he did, and I can't remember what year he came. He might have interviewed Shelby Lee or somebody. Maybe somebody else can tell me. Hey, James. Yeah, and so anyway, Matt, you know, it comes down to the end of the thing and he's quieting down, and that's when everybody's gone home and he wants to interview me. And he's already interviewed a couple other people. I don't know what he's doing. So he sits down to interview with me. And oh my God, this kid was a pro. He was really good. I mean, you know him because he's really good online. He could talk. He knew what he was doing. He had this Zoom that I'd never seen before that he was recording me digitally. And I don't know, we talked for 15, 20 minutes. And when that podcast came out, all these people tuned in, and he had a big following already that I didn't know about. And it sounded good. I mean, he made me sound good, you know, which I felt like I sounded like an idiot, and he did not make me sound like an idiot. So Matt's great. Check out his if Film Photography Podcast is still on, I have to admit that I haven't been watching it, but I have started watching his Fridays live, and I missed it this week, which I'm bummed because he mentioned Photostock. But anyway, Matt does Fridays live. He's more of a large format guy. He's really good. He does these live things like I do and makes me look like an amateur because he's got 100 people waiting there talking to him. And I really like Matt. I can't speak highly enough about him. And thanks for telling me that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Matt has the best hair on YouTube. He's always kind of had that mop up there too. Yeah. He, you know, he disappeared off my radar for a few years there, you know, and you know, sometimes that happens to me, and I tend to be one of those kind of guys that thinks I did something wrong or somebody's gotten mad at me, because I tend to stick my foot in my mouth. I just say stupid things, and I don't even know that they're stupid things sometimes. So I thought that maybe I'd done something to Matt or whatever. But anyway, he just popped back up on my radar, and I started figuring out what he was doing on YouTube just about the time that I was starting up stuff there. So, you know, it was really nice to see that he had been there, and he's got a really big following. I think he's got about 12,000 people. And yeah, he's good. I'm really hoping he'll come this year, because if he does come, I'm going to put him on the roster. So, you know, we'll get that worked out. Yeah, best hair on you. Yeah, check him out. Yeah, check out his hair. He's just got this wild mop of hair. Andy Warhol would be proud. I mean, I know Andy wore wigs in the later part of his life, so I know that Andy would have been really proud of that mop that he's got. And man, when it goes gray, he's going to be crazy. He's going to be like the old mad professor. James, hey Bill, Lith question, just mixed Arista A and B. Is there a temperature preference you have used Mixup Developer? Some prefer the normal temperature, some prefer a hot temperature. Yeah, it's gonna have to be your own game. You know, when I did Lith, I tend to like to be more warm because I like the coloring and things that I got out of the warm, but you really gotta be careful because things happen a lot faster. So, you know, that's one of those things where you're just gonna have to find your own medium. You know, I know a guy, Tim Rudman's a friend of mine, if you know who Tim is, and he would be a good person to check. I know he's got a book of Lith. I've got it, but I don't know where it is right now. I could look that up, because you know, there's a lot to that I'm probably not so great on answering. But I do know several people that are really big into it. So I'll get that. I'll ask that question and get back with you. That's a good one. I'm actually going to write that down. Boy, and they're, you know, they're James. I haven't really, lately I haven't paid much attention to what's going on in the Lith world. I know that there's an old friend of mine, Guillaume, he's working out in LA and he's been doing some really nice stuff lately. But a lot of the people that I knew, Marianne Priest was really working in it. Tim Rudman, as you know, Tim was working heavily in it there, and I don't think he's been doing it very much at all. In fact, Tim had kind of a disaster. He had a freezer in his house in Britain, and he had his freezer went bad without him knowing about it, and so a lot of the paper got wet, and a lot of his old, it was quite an archive of old papers that he had got destroyed, and I don't know if that took the wind out of his sails with the Lith stuff. But Tim is a great silver printer as well, and did his Iceland book, which he was kind enough to ask me to write a foreword of, which I hope it holds up with the work. But he came with me to Iceland on my first trip, actually the first trip when I led people. Tim Rudman came with me, and I remember him telling me, because he was really into shooting trees, and he was writing to me on the phone. He goes, "Well, they do have trees there, don't they?" And I just thought, man, there's countable trees, and back in those days, you could count almost on one hand how many big trees were in Iceland. There still aren't very many. But anyway, so Tim came to Iceland with me, and he didn't really like it at first, and then by the end of the week, he was hooked and went back many, many times and did this beautiful book. So check out Tim Rudman's book, Iceland, at some point. I'll give him a plug. The temperature thing, a lot of people go different ways with it, and some of it has to do with speed, and some of it has to do with color. And as you know, there's different papers to pull out different colors in Lith printing. That's something I'd like to get back into a little bit more, and that could get me to dig my enlarger back out of the attic up there. So thanks for that question, James, and welcome. It's good to see you here. Keith as well, and Daryl, Keith, Terry, I haven't seen you here, I don't think, but definitely know your name. This is cool. I'm having a really good time. What time are we at here? We're coming up on the time. Put my glasses back on. Wow, it's only been that long? You guys have kept me engaged today. It's been a good time. Let's see, photo stock is a good idea. You gave me the idea of storage. That's a really good thing. And I might do that in a video because it would be a cool thing to talk about live, but I'd like to do it like I do the videos. I have a lot of fun making the videos when I'm doing process videos because I have to think them through and how I'm going to show you, and that would be a good time, a good thing to do. Another thing that I wanted to mention today, and I've been getting a lot of questions lately about workshops, and am I going to teach workshops? And yes, I am. I haven't set up the year. I got a little worried about it because of, COVID stuff again. As you know, it was really hard there for a whole year. I didn't do anything in here. I did one private workshop. 2 women came and I taught them wet plate, and we did the whole socially distanced thing in masks back in those days, and it worked out fine. We were good. And but anyway, and then since then I've done a couple of gum over platinum workshops. I want to ramp up and do more. I'm thinking about attaching something to photo stock, so stay tuned about that. But I'm also thinking about doing something earlier in May, which I know isn't that far away. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to announce it pretty soon. That might end up becoming something more local. Then there's photo stock in June. July is pretty open, I think. So I'm thinking about perhaps doing one in the month of July. August, I'm looking at doing some travel. I'm still trying to figure out the Norway deal. August, let's see, September, the end of September is probably when I'm going to reschedule the Faroe Islands, and then we're probably going to go into October with Iceland. And Iceland this year, I'm thinking about changing things back around and doing it as a tour again. And rather than doing the whole thing in Djupavik, we're going to do the tour and we're going to end up in Djupavik. And Djupavik will be like our rest and relaxation and the place where we'll spend a little more time. So stay tuned on that. I'm still working it through. I'm getting a little less worried about travel and the COVID, but what I was getting worried about was travel to Europe and the war. So I don't know, we'll still see how that goes. It seems like things have been beaten back, but I just don't know, I don't know. It's scary to plan things for tours, and like I said, I've been trying to work on some things at home. I'm thinking about working on a tour at home. The first one might be next winter, or I'm thinking about working the North Shore of Lake Superior between Duluth, Minnesota and Canada, the Canadian border. It's gorgeous up there in the winter with the ice formations on the cliffs and the ice fog on the water, and you know, I'll try to pick it during a full moon, because nighttime shooting under the full moon and the ice on Lake Superior is pretty incredible. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about doing as one of my first local ones. My squirrels are back. Everybody's coming out of hibernation. Yeah, so I'm thinking about that. So, you know, the workshops are there. What I should do, though, is get them scheduled, because I know that people need time. You know, it's hard for me to just schedule something a week out, obviously, because, you know, somebody locally could come, but people aren't going to travel in for it. So I'll get those going. I'm going to start doing some other processes too. I think I'm going to get back into wet plate this summer. The wet plate video was really popular. The whole series was really popular, and people have been requesting more of the road trips, and I think I'm going to do that. I've been walking past my trailer down the driveway all summer or all winter, and you know, just dying to get in there. And actually, I opened it up the other day just to make sure mice hadn't moved in, and everything's cool. It's like I hadn't been in, you know, nothing had happened since the last time I'd been in there. So, you know, as soon as the weather warms up, I'm going to charge up the tanks in there, and I'm going to get my chemistry mixed up, and I'm going to start doing some more wet plate. I'm going to do some more video of those, traveling around the area with the trailer. So that's coming, but I might do a couple of wet plate workshops. Now, the other thing is, oh yeah, I forgot about that. August is another month where I'm thinking about scheduling something down in Athens, Georgia, if any of you are living down that way, or if that's a better way for you to go. My friend Clay Harmon and his wife Lynn have opened up a studio there in Athens, and it's a printing studio largely for his lith printing, but I'm also going to, you know, they contacted me about teaching some workshops down there. So basically what I'm going to do is rent their space out from them. I'm going to set up a workshop like I would do here, go down there and teach it. Because they have the plate burner and they have everything that we need. All I would really need to do is bring chemistry and paper and that kind of thing, my laptop. And so for any of you that geographically located that Athens is better, maybe hold off till August. I think that August is when I'm going to do that. I'll probably do it as a 5-day. The Gum Over Platinum, I'm starting to do as a 5-day now. We used to do it as a 3-day, but it's just too much, you know, it's just too much. So as a 5-day, it's great, because we kind of start off printing, then we go into the next day of digital negatives, and then the next couple of days we print more, you know, next day we print more platinum, and then the final day we start putting gum layers on things. And that tends to work out really well. It gives people more time to work. A little bit more expensive, unfortunately, but it tends to be the best way to go. And then those workshops, I build into the price. They fluctuate in price because I build into the price of palladium. And I used to get everybody 15 milliliters of palladium, but we found out that we're not using that all. So I think I'm going to cut that back to a 10 milliliter, and that will shave a little bit off the price of the workshop as well. But anyway, you get to take, you know, you each get your own chemistry, except for developer and stuff like that. You each get your own palladium and ferric oxalate. So once you're done, you can take it back home and supplement everything with the rest of the chemistry that you need, and be able to do it at home as well. And you've seen the videos. If you haven't seen the video, I'll have those up here linked later on. Yeah, that's about it. I can't think anymore. Sounds like a busy year, but you know, I got to get down to it. So let's see. Let's read back here. Hey, James. Yep. Okay. So thanks for participating today. Let's see. We're coming back up on 1 here. Yeah, I'm going to keep it about an hour today. I really appreciate y'all coming again. This is getting fun. Sorry about almost forgetting it and not being so prepared, but I think we got through this okay. You've given me some good suggestions and things to think about, and I'll start working a little bit more on an idea to advertise this. Actually, I think this is 6 weeks that we've done this, and I'm starting to feel a lot more confident about it, so maybe it's time to actually advertise it. So we'll see. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I do. I teach the digital neg as part of that. And actually, I'm going to be teaching it coming up here in May, May 18th, 19th, 20th, I think. I'm going to be teaching it at Yosemite as part of Carrick Kuklas's workshop. So if you're interested in that, it's really cool to learn in Yosemite. I don't know if, I know that the workshop has enough to go. I'm not sure if it's full. But you look at AnselAdams.com or Ansel Adams Gallery, look for their longer workshops. It'll be in there. But I'll be there teaching the digital negative on the first day. Yeah, we usually take one day for the digital negatives, and the way that I teach it so far is just using Richard Boatwell's program and QTR. But now that Richard has a way in his programs to build ACV curve files to put into Photoshop, there's a way that theoretically we can bypass using QTR. So I'm also going to consider teaching it that way, because the QTR angle is good. But back to what Barry was talking about, people trying to store, and I'll use his term, simpletons, us older people. It tends to get pretty complex using QTR, because you've got to download the RIP, you've got to load the RIP, then you've got to load the files into that. And so this way is a way to theoretically open up your image in Photoshop, work it out the way that you want, calibrated of course in Photoshop so that you know what you want to print out, and then applying the curve to that image. So it'll change the image and it'll look slightly different to you, but then you'll print that negative out without having to use QTR, and theoretically you'll have the same curve. So that's something I'm going to be experimenting on here in the next week or two. So stay tuned on that. And if I do get that worked out, I'm going to make that part of one of the new videos that I'm doing on Richard's updated version of the program for digital negatives. So sorry to answer that a long question with that short question with a long answer, but yeah, I do teach it as part of my workshops, and I will be doing that pretty soon over there. So yeah. Yeah, all the best to you, Barry, and thanks to all of you for coming. Thanks, Gary. Good to see you, Gary. Dave, thanks for being back. Okay, guys, thanks a lot, and just stay tuned. I really appreciate this. Thanks very much for coming in. Have a good day. Bye-bye.